The screaming wind rattled the windows of my small house like an angry spirit demanding entry. I stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in dishwater that had gone cold, staring out at the blizzard that had been howling for 3 hours now. The Montana winter storms were brutal, but this one felt different, more vicious, more personal somehow. My shift at County Memorial didn't start until midnight, still 5 hours away, but already I was dreading the drive. The roads would be treacherous, visibility near zero. Part of me hoped they'd call and tell me to stay home, though I knew they wouldn't. The hospital was understaffed as it was, and with weather like this, there'd be accidents, emergencies that couldn't wait until morning. I dried my hands on a worn dish towel, one of the few things I'd kept after the divorce. James had taken most everything else. Or rather, I'd let him take it. After discovering his affair with his dental hygienist, I'd wanted nothing that reminded me of our 8 years together. This house, isolated and imperfect, was mine alone. Some days that felt like freedom. Other days, like tonight, it just felt lonely. The wind shrieked again, and I heard something else beneath it, a sound that didn't belong. I pressed closer to the window, cupping my hands around my eyes to block the reflection of my kitchen light. Through the swirling snow, I could barely make out the dark shape of the road that ran past my property. Then I saw it, a darker shape against the white, something large and unmoving about 50 yards from my driveway. My breath fogged the glass as I strained to see. Was that a car? An animal? The wind cleared the snow for just a moment, and my heart lurched. A person. Someone was lying in the snow by the side of the road. I didn't stop to think. My nurse's training kicked in immediately. I grabbed my heavy coat from the hook by the door, shoved my feet into my boots without bothering to tie them properly, and snatched the first aid kit I kept in the hall closet. The wind nearly tore the door from my hands when I opened it, and snow immediately pelted my face with stinging force. The cold was shocking, even though I'd lived through 28 Montana winters. The temperature had to be well below zero with the wind chill. No one could survive long out here. I fought my way down my driveway, every step an effort against the wind that seemed determined to push me back toward the warmth of my house. As I got closer, I could see it was definitely a person, a man, lying face down in the snow. He wore dark clothes, no coat that I could see, and even in the dim light from my porch, I could see blood. Too much blood, staining the white snow around him a shocking crimson. "Sir," I called out, dropping to my knees beside him, barely feeling the cold through my jeans. "Sir, can you hear me?" No response. I pressed my fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse, and nearly sobbed with relief when I found one, weak but present. He was alive, but wouldn't be for long if I left him out here. He was heavy, probably close to 200 pounds of solid muscle, and dead weight besides. I managed to roll him onto his back, and the porch light caught his face. Even covered in blood and snow, I could see he was handsome, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and strong features. But what caught my attention more was the wound on his side. His shirt was torn and soaked with blood, and I could see what looked like a bullet hole. A bullet hole. My mind raced. I should call the police, report a shooting. But something made me hesitate. The nearest police station was 30 miles away in town. In this storm, they wouldn't get here for hours, if at all. This man would die before they arrived. I made my decision in seconds. I hooked my arms under his shoulders and began dragging him toward my house. It was agonizingly slow work. Several times I nearly fell, my boots sliding on the ice beneath the snow. My muscles burned with the effort, my lungs screaming from the cold air. But I kept pulling, kept moving, focusing only on getting him to safety. By the time I got him up my porch steps and through my door, I was gasping for breath, sweat freezing on my skin despite the cold. I managed to pull him far enough inside to kick the door shut behind us, and the sudden absence of wind was almost disorienting. I collapsed for just a moment, catching my breath, then forced myself back into nurse mode. Assessment first. I pulled off my gloves with my teeth and pressed my fingers to his neck again. His pulse was thready but still there. His breathing was shallow, rapid. Signs of shock, blood loss. I grabbed scissors from my first aid kit and cut away his shirt, my hands surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. The bullet wound was in his left side, just below his ribs. Through and through, I noted with relief. I could see both entry and exit wounds. That was good. Meant the bullet hadn't lodged inside. But he'd lost a lot of blood. I packed both wounds with gauze, applying as much pressure as I dared. His skin was ice cold beneath my hands, his lips starting to turn blue. Hypothermia was setting in. I needed to get him warm, but first I had to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," I muttered, more to myself than to him. "Come on, stay with me." I worked quickly, efficiently, falling into the rhythm I'd learned over 7 years as an ER nurse. Apply pressure, check vitals, assess for other injuries. His right wrist was swollen, possibly fractured. Bruising on his face, likely from a beating. But the bullet wound was the immediate concern. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes, the bleeding had slowed to a trickle. I wrapped his torso with an entire roll of medical bandage, tight enough to keep pressure on the wound, but not so tight as to restrict his breathing. Then I focused on warming him up. I managed to half drag, half carry him to my couch, no small feat given his size and my exhaustion. I stripped off his wet clothes, trying not to think about the intimacy of undressing a stranger, focusing only on the medical necessity. His body was covered in scars, I noticed. Old wounds that told stories of a violent life. What had this man been through? I covered him with every blanket I owned, then cranked up the heat in my small house until it was almost uncomfortable. His lips were still blue, his skin still dangerously cold. I knew I should probably take him to the hospital, but the storm was getting worse, not better. The wind howled like a wounded animal, and snow piled against my windows in growing drifts. I was trapped here with a wounded stranger, a man who'd been shot, and I had no idea who he was or why someone had tried to kill him. As if summoned by my thoughts, his eyes suddenly opened. They were dark, almost black in the dim light of my living room, and they fixed on my face with an intensity that made me catch my breath. He tried to sit up, and I pressed a hand gently to his chest. "Don't move," I said, using my calm nurse voice. "You've been shot. You've lost a lot of blood. You need to stay still." His hand, surprisingly strong given his condition, gripped my wrist. "Where am I?" His voice was rough like gravel, but there was intelligence in those dark eyes, alertness that surprised me given his injuries. "My house," I answered honestly. "I found you on the road outside. You were bleeding in the snow. I brought you inside." Something flickered in his expression, emotion I couldn't read. "You shouldn't have done that." His grip on my wrist tightened, not painfully, but firm enough that I couldn't pull away. "Do you know who I am?" "No," I admitted, my heart starting to pound. "Should I?" He studied my face for a long moment, as if trying to determine if I was lying. Then, apparently satisfied, he released my wrist, and his hand dropped back to his side. "Better if you don't." "I'm a nurse," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I see a wounded person. I help them. It's what I do. I don't need to know who you are." "A nurse." He closed his eyes briefly. "Lucky me." "You were shot," I continued, falling back on clinical detachment. "The bullet went through your side, missed any major organs as far as I can tell. But you've lost significant blood. You probably have hypothermia. Your wrist might be fractured. You need to be in a hospital." "No hospital." His eyes opened again, fixing me with that intense stare. No police. No one can know I'm here. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the cold. I have to report gunshot wounds. It's the law. The law, he repeated, and something like bitter amusement crossed his face. The law doesn't apply to people like me. People like him. What did that mean? My mind raced through possibilities. None of them good. Criminal? Fugitive? The scars on his body? The bullet wound? His insistence on secrecy all painted a picture I didn't want to see. I saved your life, I said quietly. I dragged you out of a blizzard and patched you up. The least you can do is tell me your name. He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Dominic. Dominic, I repeated. I'm Sarah. Sarah. The way he said my name sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. You should have left me in the snow, Sarah. Why? I asked, even though part of me was afraid of the answer. Because now you're in danger too. His eyes were starting to close again, exhaustion and blood loss pulling him back under. If they find out you helped me, if they know I'm here, they'll come for you. They'll kill you just for being in the same room with me. My mouth went dry. Who will? Who's trying to kill you? But he was already unconscious again, his breathing evening out into the shallow rhythm of sleep. Or maybe shock. I checked his pulse again, relieved to find it stronger than before. The warmth and my amateur medical attention had stabilized him, at least for now. I sat back on my heels, staring at this stranger, this Dominic, who'd brought danger to my doorstep along with his wounds. Every instinct screamed at me to call the police, to get him out of my house. But the nurse in me, the part that had taken an oath to do no harm, couldn't bring myself to throw a wounded man back into the storm. The wind rattled my windows again, and I pulled my coat tighter around myself. I'd made my choice when I dragged him inside. Now I'd have to live with the consequences, whatever they might be. I just hoped I'd survive them. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat in the armchair across from the couch where Dominic lay unconscious, watching the rise and fall of his chest, checking his pulse every 20 minutes, changing his bandages twice when blood seeped through. The storm continued its assault on my small house, wind screaming like tortured souls, snow building against the windows until I could barely see out. Around 4 a.m, I finally allowed myself to close my eyes for just a moment. That's when my phone rang, the shrill sound making me jump so violently I nearly fell from the chair. I grabbed it from the side table, my heart hammering. The screen showed my supervisor's name, Linda Chen. Sarah? Linda's voice crackled with static. Are you okay? The roads are completely impassable. We're calling everyone in, telling them to stay home. Don't even try to come in for your shift. Relief washed through me. I'm fine, safe at home. Good, stay there. They're saying this storm won't break until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. I'll call you when we need you back. After we hung up, I looked over at Dominic. His color was better now, no longer that frightening blue-white. But he was still unconscious, his body fighting to recover from the trauma and blood loss. I needed to keep him stable, keep him alive. And I needed to figure out what to do about him. I heated up some soup, more for something to do with my hands than because I was hungry. As I stood at the stove, stirring mindlessly, I replayed his warning in my mind. They'll come for you. They'll kill you. Who were they? What had this man done to warrant being shot and left for dead in a blizzard? A sound from the living room made me drop the spoon. I rushed back to find Dominic's eyes open again, more alert this time, scanning the room with the practiced awareness of someone used to assessing threats. You're still here, he said, his voice stronger than before. It's my house, I replied, trying for levity and failing. Where else would I be? Smart people would have run by now. He tried to sit up, winced, and pressed a hand to his bandaged side. How long was I out? About 6 hours. I moved closer, reaching out to check his forehead for fever. He caught my wrist again, but gently this time. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, reading the fear I was trying to hide. "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it already. That's not as reassuring as you think it is." I pulled my wrist free and stepped back. "You need to drink something. You've lost a lot of fluids." I brought him water, helped him sit up enough to drink without choking. His hand trembled slightly as he gripped the glass, the first sign of weakness I'd seen. When he'd finished, he leaned back against the pillows I'd propped behind him, studying me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You don't recognize me at all," he said. It wasn't a question. Should I? A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Most people in Montana know my face. Most people west of the Mississippi, actually. My stomach tightened. "Why?" Instead of answering, he nodded toward my laptop sitting on the coffee table. "Look me up. Dominic Raven." My hands shook as I opened the laptop and typed his name into the search bar. The results loaded, and my blood ran cold. Page after page of news articles. FBI's most wanted. Organized crime kingpin. The Raven, they called him. Head of the largest criminal organization in the western United States. Suspected in dozens of murders, though never convicted. Racketeering, money laundering, drug trafficking, weapons dealing. The list went on and on. I looked up from the screen to find him watching me, his expression neutral, almost curious to see how I'd react. "You're a mob boss," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I prefer businessman," he replied, that faint smile returning. "But yes, essentially." I stood up so fast the laptop nearly slid off my lap. "You need to leave. Now. Get out of my house." "Can't." He gestured to his bandaged torso. "Still bleeding, remember? Besides, the storm hasn't let up. I'd die before I made it to the road." "That's not my problem." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I couldn't throw a wounded man out into the storm, criminal or not. My oath as a nurse wouldn't allow it, and Dominic knew it. I could see it in his eyes. "You're stuck with me, Sarah," he said softly. "At least until the storm breaks. After that, I'll disappear, and you can forget you ever saw me." Just like that. I crossed my arms, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "You'll just walk away, and no one will ever know I helped you?" "No one will know unless you tell them." His expression hardened. "And if you're smart, you won't. The people who did this to me," he touched his wounded side, "they have resources, connections. If they find out you helped me, they'll assume you know something, that I told you something. They'll come after you." "Who are they?" "Rivals, enemies. Take your pick." He closed his eyes briefly. "I have more than I can count." The wind chose that moment to rattle the windows again, as if emphasizing how trapped we were together. I looked at this man, this dangerous criminal who shouldn't be alive, who I'd saved without knowing what he was. Part of me wanted to demand he tell me everything. Another part, the wiser part, wanted to know nothing at all. "I need to check your bandages," I said finally, falling back on the professional distance of a nurse. "And clean the wound properly. If it gets infected, then I die and your problem solves itself," he finished. "I don't want you to die," I admitted. "I don't want anyone to die, even criminals." Something shifted in his expression, a softness I hadn't expected. "You're too good for this world, Sarah Mitchell." I froze. "How do you know my last name?" He nodded toward my mail on the kitchen counter, visible from the couch, an envelope with my name and address printed clearly on it. Right. I felt foolish for my moment of panic. Of course he could see my mail. But it reminded me how observant he was, how he missed nothing despite his injuries. I spent the next hour tending to his wounds. The bullet holes were clean, no signs of infection yet, but they needed proper sutures. I'd done field suturing during my training, but never anything this serious outside a hospital setting. My hands were steady as I worked, muscle memory taking over, but my mind raced. This man was a killer. The articles had been clear about that. People had died because of him, because of his orders. Yet here I was, carefully stitching his flesh, trying to save his life. What did that make me? Complicit? A fool? Both? "You're good at this," Dominic observed, watching me work with surprising calm. Most people would have flinched at the needle, but he barely reacted. "I've been a nurse for 7 years," I said, focusing on my stitches. "ER mostly. I've seen my share of trauma." "Why here?" he asked. "You could work anywhere. Better hospitals, bigger cities, better pay." I like the quiet. It was only partially true. I'd moved here after the divorce, wanting to disappear, to start over somewhere no one knew me or my failures. And I'm good in emergencies. Small hospitals need that. "You're wasted here." I looked up sharply. "You don't know anything about me. I know you dragged a 200-pound stranger out of a blizzard," he said quietly. "I know you patched me up instead of calling the cops. I know you're scared right now, but you're not running. That tells me plenty." His words settled uncomfortably in my chest. I finished the last stitch and bandaged him again, clean white gauze that would probably need changing again in a few hours. "Rest," I instructed. "Your body needs time to heal." "Worried about me, nurse?" There was something almost teasing in his tone. "Worried about what happens if you die in my living room," I corrected. "That's a lot harder to explain than a missing person." He laughed, a rough sound that made him wince and press a hand to his side. "Fair enough." As I gathered the medical supplies, I felt his gaze on me, studying, assessing. It should have made me uncomfortable. Instead, I felt something else. A strange awareness. An unwanted curiosity about this man who lived in a world so different from mine. "Get some sleep," he said. "You've been up all night. I'll still be here when you wake up." "How do I know you won't just leave?" "Because I can barely stand," he said bluntly. "And because, contrary to what you might think, I keep my word. I said I'd leave when the storm breaks. Until then, you're stuck with me." I wanted to argue, to protest, but exhaustion was catching up with me. My body ached from dragging him inside, from the stress and fear of the past several hours. And he was right. He wasn't going anywhere in his condition. "Fine," I said. "But if you so much as think about trying anything..." "You'll what?" He raised an eyebrow. "Call the police? We've established that's not an option for either of us." He had a point. I was harboring a fugitive, whether I'd intended to or not. If the police found out, I could lose my nursing license, maybe even face criminal charges. I'd saved his life, and in doing so, I'd tied my fate to his. I retreated to my bedroom, but left the door open so I could hear if he moved. I lay down on top of the covers, still fully dressed, my phone clutched in one hand. Just in case. Sleep took me under within minutes, a heavy, dreamless sleep born of exhaustion. When I woke, gray afternoon light was filtering through my bedroom window. The wind had finally died down, though snow still fell steadily outside. I sat up, disoriented for a moment, then remembered. Dominic, the wounded mob boss in my living room. I hurried out of my bedroom, half expecting to find him gone despite his promise. But he was still there on the couch, awake and watching the doorway as if he'd been waiting for me to emerge. "Storm's breaking," he observed. "Another few hours and the roads might be passable." "Good." I tried to sound relieved, but the word came out flat. "Then you can leave." "Eager to be rid of me?" eager to get my life back to normal. He laughed again, that rough sound. Normal. That's a nice fantasy. What's that supposed to mean? Before he could answer, his phone, which I'd found in his pocket and placed on the coffee table, began to buzz. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The relaxed, almost playful attitude vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "I have to take this," he said, his voice hard. "Leave the room. This is my house. Leave the room." There was no mistaking the authority in his voice, the command of someone used to being obeyed instantly. I retreated to the kitchen, but I could still hear his side of the conversation. He spoke in what sounded like Italian, his voice low and rapid. I couldn't understand the words, but I understood the tone, danger, urgency, anger. When he finally ended the call, silence filled the house, a silence somehow more frightening than the storm had been. I emerged from the kitchen to find him trying to stand, his face pale with effort. "What are you doing? You'll tear your stitches." "I need to leave. Now." "You can barely stand. You've lost too much blood." "They know I'm alive," he said, his jaw tight with pain or anger or both. "They know someone pulled me from that road. They're coming to find out who." My blood turned to ice. How? How could they possibly know? Because I'm not answering my phone. Because my GPS went dark in this location. He managed to get to his feet, swaying slightly. Because they know I wouldn't just disappear unless I was either dead or being protected by someone. "You need to tell me who they are," I demanded. "If someone's coming after me, I deserve to know why." He looked at me for a long moment, something like regret crossing his features. "Viktor Kozlov. Russian mob. I've been undermining his operations for months, taking his territory, his men. He decided to eliminate the problem. By shooting you and leaving you in a blizzard. By having his men ambush my car, shoot me, and dump me on a back road where no one would find me until spring." He pressed a hand to his side, his stitches clearly causing him pain. "But you found me. And now Kozlov knows someone did. He'll send people to investigate, to find anyone who might have seen something." "I live alone," I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. "No one knows you're here. How would they even find this place?" "They'll canvass every house on this road, every property within miles of where I was found. And when they talk to you, they'll know you're lying. Trust me, they're good at spotting lies." Fear clawed at my throat. "What do I do?" "You run," he said bluntly. "Pack a bag, get in your car, and drive as far from here as you can. I can't just leave my life behind. Better your life than your life." He moved toward the door, each step clearly agonizing. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I never meant for you to get caught up in this." "Wait." I grabbed his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles even through his borrowed shirt. "If I run, won't that make me look guilty? Make them think I know something?" He paused, considering. "Probably." "So running won't help. Staying won't help. Either way, I'm a target." "Welcome to my world," he said grimly. We stood there, inches apart, the reality of the situation settling over us like a shroud. I'd saved his life, and in doing so, I'd marked myself for death. There was no going back, no undoing what I'd done. "Then, I guess you're not leaving after all," I said quietly. "What?" "If they're coming here anyway, you might as well stay. You said it yourself, you can barely walk. Where exactly were you planning to go?" "I have people. Safe houses. They'll come get me." "How long until they can get here? In this weather?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "You stay until you're strong enough to actually stand a chance. I continued, surprised by my own boldness. And in the meantime, you tell me everything I need to know to keep myself alive when your Russian friends come knocking. Dominic studied me with those dark eyes, respect and something else flickering in their depths. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. I helped him back to the couch, supporting more of his weight than I wanted to admit. But I'm a nurse. I'm trained to handle crisis situations. So sit down, stop trying to be a hero, and tell me what I'm up against. He sank back onto the couch with a grimace. You're going to regret helping me. I probably already do, I admitted. But it's too late now. So start talking. And as the storm finally began to break outside, Dominic Raven told me exactly what kind of danger I'd brought into my home. Dominic talked for hours, and with every word, the life I'd known crumbled a little more. He started with the basics. The structure of his organization, his legitimate businesses that served as fronts, the network of loyalty and fear that kept it all functioning. Then he moved on to Viktor Kozlov, the Russian who'd been trying to muscle into Dominic's territory for the past 2 years, escalating from business interference to outright warfare. 3 months ago, Kozlov made his move, Dominic said, shifting on the couch to find a more comfortable position. The pain medication I'd given him was making him drowsy, loosening his usual careful control. Tried to take over my shipping operations in Seattle. Lost $20 million in product when I burned his warehouses to the ground. You burned. I couldn't even finish the sentence. Empty warehouses, he clarified, catching my expression. I'm not a monster, Sarah. I had them evacuated first. No casualties. How generous, I said, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. In my world, it was. His eyes met mine, challenging me to understand. Kozlov would have killed everyone inside and called it a message. I gave him a different message. Back off or lose everything. Obviously, he didn't listen. No. Instead, he went after me personally. Had his men intercept my car 2 nights ago when I was driving back from a meeting in Great Falls. They knew my route, knew I'd be alone. Someone in my organization sold me out. The words hung heavy in the air. A traitor. Someone close enough to Dominic to know his movements, to set him up for an assassination. Do you know who? I asked. I have suspicions. His jaw tightened. And when this is over, I'll deal with them. I didn't ask what deal with them meant. I didn't want to know. So Kozlov's men shot you and left you in the storm, I continued, trying to focus on the immediate threat. But you survived. What happens now? Now Kozlov has a problem. If I'm alive, I'm a witness to his attempt on my life. More importantly, I know which of my people betrayed me. He can't let me reach my organization with that information. So he needs to finish the job. Yes, and eliminate anyone who might have helped me survive. He looked at me pointedly. Which means you. I stood up, suddenly needing to move, to pace. The walls of my small house felt like they were closing in. How long do we have? Before they come here? Hard to say. The storms bought us time, but Kozlov's people are thorough. They'll start canvassing as soon as the roads are clear enough. Could be tomorrow. Could be tonight, if they push hard enough. And when they get here, what do I tell them? The truth, mostly. Dominic's voice was calm, almost clinical, like he was walking me through a medical procedure. You're a nurse. You live alone. You've been stuck inside during the storm. You haven't seen anything unusual. And if they don't believe me, then you call this number. He handed me his phone, showing me a contact simply labeled Bishop. He's my second. He'll send people to extract you. Extract me, I repeated numbly, like I'm a spy in a foreign country. You might as well be. Kozlov's territory is foreign enough. He studied me for a moment. You're handling this better than I expected. I'm in shock, I admitted. It hasn't fully hit me yet that my life just became a crime thriller. When it does hit you, don't fall apart. Fear makes people make mistakes, and mistakes get you killed. His bluntness should have terrified me. Instead, it was almost reassuring. At least he was being honest, not trying to minimize the danger or offer false comfort. "Tell me about Kozlov," I said, settling back into the armchair. "What kind of man am I dealing with?" Dominic's expression darkened. "The worst kind. He's smart, patient, and absolutely ruthless. He came up through the Bratva in Moscow, made his bones during the gang wars of the 90s, survived when others didn't by being more brutal than his enemies could imagine." "You mean he's a killer?" "We're all killers in this business, Sarah. The difference is Kozlov enjoys it, takes pleasure in causing pain. I've seen what he does to people who cross him." He paused, something almost like emotion crossing his face. "It's not quick. It's not clean. And he makes sure there's an audience." My hands were shaking. I clasped them together in my lap, trying to hide it. "And his men? The ones who might come here?" "Ex-military, most of them. Spetsnaz, Russian special forces. They'll be armed, well-trained, and under orders to find out what happened to me. If they think you know something, they'll take you. Question you properly." "Torture, you mean?" "Yes. No hesitation, no softening of the truth. They'll torture you until you tell them everything you know, then kill you to eliminate the witness." I stood up again, my legs suddenly unsteady. This was insane. 24 hours ago, my biggest problem was loneliness and a job that barely paid the bills. Now I was caught in a mob war, marked for death by Russian assassins. "I need air," I said, heading for the door. "Don't." Dominic's voice stopped me. "Don't go outside. From this moment on, you need to act exactly as you normally would. Any deviation from routine will be noticed, remembered. And right now, would you normally go outside in this weather?" He was right, of course. I never went outside during storms unless I had to. I forced myself to step back from the door, to breathe slowly, to center myself the way I did before handling a critical patient in the ER. "How do you live like this?" I asked quietly. "Always looking over your shoulder, never knowing who to trust." "You get used to it." But something in his voice suggested he never really had. "And you find things worth protecting, people worth protecting. That makes it bearable. Do you have family?" "Had." The single word carried volumes of pain. "My brother was killed 5 years ago. Rival gang, revenge for something I'd done. My sister moved to Italy with her kids after that. Safer there. I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew the risks when I took over my father's organization. I made my choices and I live with the consequences." He looked at me steadily. "But you didn't choose this. You just tried to save a life. You deserve better than being dragged into my world." "Then help me survive it," I said, moving back to the chair. "What else do I need to know?" For the next several hours, Dominic taught me how to lie convincingly, how to spot surveillance, how to recognize the telltale signs of someone preparing to attack. He described Kozlov's typical enforcers, their appearances, their tactics, their weaknesses. He gave me escape routes from my own house, places to hide, ways to signal for help. It was like cramming for the most important exam of my life, except failure meant death. "The most important thing," Dominic said as night fell again outside, "is to stay calm. They'll be watching your reactions, your body language. Any sign of fear or deception, and they'll push harder. You need to be boring, forgettable. Just another isolated woman weathering a storm alone." "Except I'm not alone," I pointed out. "You're here. By tomorrow, I won't be." He shifted on the couch, testing his strength. My people are coming at first light. They'll take me to a safe house, and you'll be free of this complication. Just in time for the Russians to show up and question me. Better to be questioned without me here. If they find us together, there's no explaining that away. He paused. Though I'll have men watching this place. If Kozlov's people try anything, they'll intervene. So I'll have Russian assassins at my front door and Italian mobsters watching my back. Perfect. Despite everything, Dominic smiled. Italian-American, technically. My grandfather came over from Sicily in the 50s. That's not as comforting as you think it is. His smile faded. I know. But it's all the comfort I can offer right now. We fell into silence, the weight of tomorrow's uncertainties pressing down on us. Outside, the snow had finally stopped, leaving the world blanketed in white. It looked peaceful, pristine, a lie covering the ugliness beneath. Why did you tell me all this? I asked after a while. You could have just left once the storm broke. Let me figure it out on my own. Because I owe you my life, he said simply. And because. He stopped, seeming to struggle with something. Because you remind me there are still good people in this world. People who help strangers without asking what's in it for them. I'd forgotten that was possible. His words touched something in me. A loneliness I'd been ignoring since the divorce. The isolation I'd chosen was supposed to protect me from being hurt again. Instead, it had just left me numb, going through the motions of living without really feeling alive. I'm not as good as you think, I said quietly. I make mistakes. Plenty of them. Everyone makes mistakes. He looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. The question is whether you try to fix them or run from them, says the man running from Russian assassins. I'm not running, I'm regrouping. His eyes never left mine. There's a difference. The temperature in the room seemed to shift, the air between us suddenly charged with something I couldn't name. I was acutely aware of how close we were, how the lamplight caught the sharp angles of his face, how despite his injuries and the danger surrounding us, there was an undeniable magnetism to him. I stood abruptly, breaking the moment. You need to rest. I'll make us something to eat. Sarah. My name on his lips stopped me at the threshold to the kitchen. I turned back to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet, I said, trying for levity. I might still turn you in for the reward money. There's a reward, I assume. You're on the FBI's most wanted list. He laughed, that rough sound I was starting to recognize. Actually, there is. $2 million for information leading to my arrest. I whistled low. That's almost tempting. Is it? The question was serious, not playful. He was actually asking if I'd considered it, if I was that kind of person. No, I admitted. I'm not. For better or worse, I saved your life, and I don't take that lightly. Whatever you've done, whatever you are, that's between you and your conscience. I'm just trying to keep us both alive. Something in his expression softened. You're a rare woman, Sarah Mitchell. So I've been told. I turned back toward the kitchen before I could do something stupid, like walk back to him, like touch his face, like forget entirely that he was a dangerous criminal who'd brought death to my doorstep. But as I prepared our meal, hands moving through familiar motions while my mind raced, I couldn't escape the truth settling in my chest. Saving Dominic Raven's life might be the best or worst decision I'd ever made. And I had a feeling I'd find out which very soon. Dawn came too quickly, pale sunlight glinting off snow that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee mug cradled in both hands, watching the road for signs of approaching vehicles. My nerves were frayed from another sleepless night, this time spent hyper-aware of every sound, every creak of the house settling, imagining threats in every shadow. Behind me, I heard Dominic moving around my living room, testing his strength. He'd spent the last hour doing careful exercises, stretching, walking slowly from the couch to the window and back. The color had returned to his face, and though he moved with obvious pain, he was far steadier than he'd been yesterday. "Your people should be here soon," I said without turning around. "Are you sure you're well enough to move?" "I don't have a choice." His voice came from directly behind me, close enough that I could feel his body heat. I hadn't heard him approach, a reminder of how quietly he could move despite his injuries. "The longer I stay, the more danger you're in." "I'm already in danger." I turned to face him, suddenly angry at the unfairness of it all. "You said so yourself. Kozlov knows someone helped you. Whether you're here or not won't change that." "No, but if they find you alone, with no connection to me, they might believe you're innocent. If they find us together..." He didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. A sound in the distance made us both freeze, the low rumble of an engine. Dominic moved to the window, peering through the curtains with the wariness of a hunted animal. 2 SUVs, black and sleek, were making their way up my snow-covered driveway. "That's them," he said, his posture relaxing marginally. "My people." Relief and regret warred in my chest. Relief that he'd soon be gone, that the immediate danger in my home would be removed. Regret that I'd never know what happened next, whether he survived, whether Kozlov eventually found him, whether I'd survive what was coming. The SUVs stopped in front of my house, and 4 men emerged, all wearing dark clothing, all moving with the same predatory grace as Dominic. The one who'd been driving the first vehicle approached my door, knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. Some kind of signal. Dominic opened the door, and I got my first look at his world beyond the abstraction of news articles and his descriptions. These weren't businessmen. They were soldiers, hardened and dangerous, the kind of men most people cross the street to avoid. "Boss." The leader, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair and cold blue eyes, looked Dominic over with barely concealed concern. "Christ, they said you were dead." They were almost right. Dominic gestured them inside, and suddenly my small living room felt very crowded. "Bishop, meet Sarah Mitchell." She pulled me from the snow and patched me up. Bishop's eyes turned to me, assessing, calculating. I felt stripped bare under that gaze, like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. "Ma'am," he said with a slight nod, "we're in your debt." "She's not in the game, Bishop." Dominic's voice carried a warning. "She stays out of this. She's a civilian who made a mistake." "A mistake that saved your life," I corrected, stung by the dismissal. "A mistake that put you on Kozlov's radar," Dominic shot back. "Don't romanticize it." Before I could respond, one of the other men spoke up, a younger guy with a scar running down his left cheek. "We need to move, boss. Intel says Kozlov's people are already in the area, going door to door." My stomach dropped. "How close?" "They hit the Hendersons' place an hour ago, about 5 miles down the road." Bishop pulled out his phone, showing me a map with red dots marking locations. "They're being thorough. They'll be here by this afternoon, maybe sooner." "Then we need to get you out of here now," Dominic said to me. "What? No. This is my home." Which they already know about. He turned to Bishop. "Get her to the safe house in Kalispell. Keep her there until this blows over." "I'm not going anywhere," I protested. "If I disappear right before Kozlov's men show up, that'll look even more suspicious." "She's right," Bishop admitted reluctantly. Running now would confirm their suspicions. Dominic's jaw tightened, frustration clear in every line of his body. "Then what do you suggest? We leave her here to face Kozlov's interrogation team alone? We leave her here with protection, Bishop said. Hidden protection. 2 men watching the house from a distance. If things go sideways, they intervene. And if Kozlov's men spot them first, they won't. Bishop's voice carried absolute certainty. Marco and Tony are the best we have. They'll be invisible. Dominic looked at me, something like desperation in his eyes. You don't have to do this. You could disappear right now. Start over somewhere Kozlov would never find you. With what money? I asked practically. I have maybe $3,000 in savings. That wouldn't get me far, and I'd be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. I took a breath, steadying myself. Besides, I'm tired of running. I ran from my marriage when it fell apart. I ran to Montana to hide from my failures. I'm done running. This isn't about bravery, Sarah. It's about survival. Then teach me how to survive. I met his gaze steadily. You spent last night teaching me how to lie, how to spot danger. Now put it to the test. Let me prove I can handle this. Bishop watched our exchange with interest, a slight smile playing at his lips. She's got spine, boss, and she's right about the optics. If she stays, acts normal, there's a chance Kozlov's people will write her off as a dead end. And if they don't, then Marco and Tony do what they do best. Bishop's smile turned cold. Problem solved. Dominic stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the war raging behind his eyes. Part of him wanted to throw me over his shoulder and carry me to safety whether I agreed or not. Another part, the part that respected my autonomy, my right to choose, was forcing him to let me stay. Fine, he said finally. But you follow Bishop's protocols exactly. No improvisation, no heroics. If they take you, you know nothing. You're just a nurse who was home during the storm. I understand. Do you? He moved closer, his voice dropping. Because understanding and living it are 2 different things. When they're in your face, when they're threatening you, when every instinct is screaming at you to tell them what they want to hear, you have to stay calm. You have to remember that giving them what they want won't save you. It'll just confirm you're involved. I won't break, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Bishop cleared his throat. We need to move, boss. Every minute we're here increases the risk. Dominic nodded reluctantly, then turned back to me one last time. My number's in your phone now. You call if anything feels wrong. Anything at all. I will. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something more, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, he did something that surprised us both. He pulled me into a brief, fierce embrace, careful of his injured side. Stay alive, Sarah Mitchell, he murmured against my hair. I'd hate for your death to be on my conscience. Then he was gone, following his men out to the waiting SUVs. I watched from the window as they loaded him into the second vehicle, watched as both SUVs navigated carefully down my driveway and disappeared around the bend. The house felt impossibly empty without him. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning obsessively, erasing any trace of Dominic's presence. I washed the blankets he'd used, scrubbed blood from the hardwood floor near the couch, disposed of the medical supplies in a trash bag I planned to burn later. By the time I was finished, there was no evidence anyone but me had been here during the storm. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. In position. You're covered. Stay calm. M. Marco, I assumed, one of my invisible guardians. The knowledge that armed men were watching my house should have been comforting. Instead, it just reminded me how surreal my life had become in less than 48 hours. I made lunch, though I could barely eat. I tried to read, to watch television, to do anything that would make me seem like a woman simply passing time after a storm. But my nerves were stretched tight, every sound making me jump, my eyes constantly drawn to the window and the road beyond. At 2:47 p.m., I saw them. 2 vehicles, not SUVs like Dominic's people had driven, but a pickup truck and a sedan, both dark-colored and nondescript. They moved slowly up the road, stopping at each house. Through my window, I could see figures emerging, knocking on doors, having brief conversations with my neighbors. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and preparing for since Dominic had first warned me. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to center myself the way I did before a crisis in the ER. I could do this. I'd face screaming patients, grieving families, life and death decisions made in seconds. I could face a few questions from dangerous men. The vehicles reached the Hendersons' house, 3 properties down from mine. I watched as 2 men got out, approached the door. The conversation seemed tense, lasted longer than the others had. Finally, the men returned to their vehicles and continued up the road, toward me. I moved away from the window, not wanting to be caught watching. I settled on the couch with a book, forcing my hands to stop shaking, forcing my expression into something neutral, maybe slightly annoyed at being interrupted. The knock came sharp and aggressive, not the polite tap of a neighbor or delivery person. 3 hard strikes that demanded attention. I counted to 10, letting them knock again before I answered. Too quick would seem suspicious, like I'd been waiting. Too slow might make them force their way in. I opened the door to find 2 men standing on my porch. Both were large, built like the soldiers Bishop's team had been. But there was something different about them. Something colder. Dominic's men had been dangerous, yes, but professional. These men looked at me like I was prey. Yes? I kept my voice slightly irritated, the tone of someone whose quiet afternoon had been disrupted. Good afternoon, ma'am. The speaker was the taller of the 2, with pale eyes and a Slavic accent that confirmed my worst suspicions. Russian. Kozlov's men. We're looking for someone who may have been in the area during the storm. Have you seen anyone unusual? Anyone who might have been lost or injured? During the storm? I frowned, playing confused. I've been stuck inside for 2 days. Haven't seen anyone. You live here alone? The second man, stockier with a shaved head, was already looking past me into my house, his eyes scanning for anything out of place. Yes. Just me. I didn't elaborate, didn't offer information they hadn't asked for. Just as Dominic had taught me. Mind if we come in? Just a quick look around. We're trying to be thorough. Actually, I do mind. I kept my voice polite but firm. I don't know who you are or why you're really here. If you're with the police, show me a badge. Otherwise, I'd like you to leave my property. The pale-eyed man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We're private investigators, ma'am, working for a family whose son went missing near here. We just want to make sure he didn't seek shelter during the storm. Like I said, I haven't seen anyone. Now, if you'll excuse me. The stocky one moved suddenly, his boot wedging in the door before I could close it. It'll just take a minute, miss. We won't touch anything. My pulse spiked, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was a test, I realized. They were pushing to see how I'd react, whether I'd panic or fold. I said no. I met his eyes without flinching. You can either leave now, or I can call the sheriff and report you for trespassing and attempted home invasion. Your choice. For a long moment, we stood there in a silent standoff. Then the pale-eyed man put a hand on his partner's shoulder, pulling him back. Of course, ma'am. We apologize for the intrusion. But his eyes never left mine, studying, assessing. If you do see anyone, or remember anything unusual, would you give us a call? He handed me a card with a phone number, no name, no company affiliation. Sure. I took the card without looking at it. They started to leave, but the pale-eyed man paused at the bottom of my porch steps. That's a lot of medical supplies for someone who lives alone. You a nurse or something? My blood ran cold. How did he know about the medical supplies? Had they been watching the house before they knocked? Had they seen me disposing of the trash earlier? ER nurse, I answered, keeping my voice steady. Old habits. I like to be prepared for emergencies. Smart. He smiled that cold smile again. You never know when someone might need help. Then they were gone, walking back to their vehicles with the casual confidence of predators who knew their prey couldn't escape. I watched them drive away, not moving from the doorway until they disappeared from view. Only then did I let myself collapse against the doorframe, my legs suddenly weak. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold on to the card they'd given me. I'd done it. I'd faced them, lied to them, sent them away. But I knew this wasn't over. The way that man had looked at me, the way he'd mentioned the medical supplies, he suspected something. Maybe not the full truth, but enough to keep me on their list. My phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number. You did good. They're gone for now. Stay alert, I typed back with trembling fingers. They knew about the medical supplies. The response came quickly. We know. Stay inside. Don't answer the door again tonight. I locked the door, checked every window, closed all the curtains. Then I sat on my couch in the growing darkness, alone but not alone, protected by men I'd never met, hunted by others who saw me as a loose end that needed tying up. And somewhere out there, Dominic was making his own plans, fighting his own battles, plans that still somehow involved me, whether I wanted them to or not. My phone rang, making me jump. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Sarah. Dominic's voice, tight with concern. Bishop told me what happened. Are you all right? I'm fine. They bought it, I think. At least enough that they left. They'll be back. He didn't sugarcoat it. That was reconnaissance. Next time they'll come with more men, more questions. You need to leave now, tonight. My people can... No. I surprised myself with the firmness in my voice. I told you, I'm done running. Besides, leaving now would just confirm their suspicions. Sarah, please. You taught me how to survive this, Dominic. Now let me prove I can. He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion he couldn't quite hide. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. I'm a nurse, I reminded him. Stubbornness is a job requirement. A sound that might have been a laugh. Bishop's men will stay on you, round-the-clock protection. If anything changes, if they come back, you call me immediately. I will. And Sarah? A pause. Thank you. For not breaking. For being strong enough to face them. I had a good teacher. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my living room, thinking about how much had changed in 2 days. I'd gone from lonely and numb to terrified and hyper-alive. I'd saved a criminal's life, and in doing so, had somehow found a purpose I'd been missing since the divorce. I was in danger. Yes, real, immediate danger. But I was also fighting back, refusing to be a victim, refusing to let fear dictate my choices. And somewhere in all of this, I'd formed a connection with a man who should have been nothing but a patient, nothing but a complication. A connection that scared me almost as much as the Russian assassins did. Because Dominic Raven was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with his criminal empire. He was dangerous because he saw me, really saw me, in a way no one had in years. Because when he looked at me, I didn't feel invisible anymore. And that, I was beginning to realize, might be the most dangerous thing of all. 3 days passed in a strange limbo. I returned to work at the hospital, Bishop's men following at a discreet distance, their presence a constant reminder that my life was no longer entirely my own. The Russians didn't return to my house, but I felt them watching, waiting, gathering information. Dominic called every night, ostensibly to check on my safety, but our conversations gradually evolved into something else. Something neither of us seemed willing to name. We talked about my work, his childhood in Brooklyn, my failed marriage, his complicated relationship with his father's legacy. We talked about everything except the obvious, that with each passing day, the distance between us felt less like safety and more like loss. On the fourth night, he asked me to meet him. "It's not safe," I protested, even as part of me thrilled at the prospect of seeing him again. "Nowhere's safe right now," he countered. "But this is as close as I can offer. There's a cabin about 40 miles north of you. Completely isolated, secure. My men will bring you." "Why?" I asked. "Why risk it?" A long pause. "Because I need to see you. Because..." He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because you're in this mess because of me, and I can't just leave you to face it alone. You deserve answers. Real answers. Not the sanitized version I gave you that first day." 2 hours later, I was in the back of an SUV, Marco driving in careful silence while Tony, the scarred one, rode shotgun. The winter night was clear and cold, stars brilliant in the unpolluted Montana sky. We turned off the main road onto a barely visible track, wound through dense forest for 20 minutes, finally emerging at a cabin that looked like something from a postcard. Warm light glowed in the windows. Smoke curled from the chimney. It should have looked welcoming, but I knew better. This was a fortress disguised as a retreat, probably armed to the teeth and monitored by surveillance I couldn't see. Dominic met me at the door. He looked better than when I'd last seen him. Stronger, though he still moved carefully, protecting his healing wounds. He'd shaved, trimmed his hair, and wore casual clothes that made him look almost normal. Almost. "You came," he said, and I heard relief in his voice. "Did you think I wouldn't?" I wasn't sure. He stepped aside to let me enter. "Come in. It's warmer inside." The cabin's interior was unexpectedly comfortable, all wood and stone with expensive furnishings that spoke of money spent on quality rather than flash. A fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace. Wine and food were laid out on a rustic wooden table. "You went to a lot of trouble," I observed. "You saved my life. Seemed like the least I could do was feed you properly." He gestured to the table. "Hungry?" We ate in relative silence at first, the awkwardness of the situation settling over us. Here we were, a nurse and a mob boss, sharing wine and conversation like normal people, pretending the danger and violence didn't exist outside these walls. "Bishop tells me Kozlov's people have been asking about you in town," Dominic said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. "Carefully, not obviously, but they're definitely interested in the nurse who lives alone on Cedar Ridge Road." "I know. I've noticed them watching the hospital. Different faces, but always someone there." I took a sip of wine, grateful for its warmth. "How long until they make their move?" "Depends on what else they find. Right now, you're just a possibility, a potential loose end. But if they get confirmation that I survived, if they trace any connection between us..." He didn't finish the thought. "Then they'll come for me properly. Not just to question, but to eliminate." "Yes." His hands tightened on his wineglass. "Which is why I'm offering you a way out. Complete protection. A new identity. Relocation to anywhere in the world you want to go. I have resources, Sarah. I can make you disappear so thoroughly even Kozlov would never find you." "And in exchange?" "Nothing." He met my eyes. "No strings, no obligations. Just my way of trying to fix the disaster I brought into your life." I studied him across the table, this complicated man who'd somehow become central to my thoughts in such a short time. "You really mean that, don't you? You'd just let me go, set me up with a new life. never see me again. If that's what you want, yes. And if it's not what I want? Something flickered in his eyes, hope warring with caution. Then we need to talk about what comes next. Because there's something I haven't told you. Something about why I was really on that road the night you found me. My pulse quickened. I'm listening. He stood, moving to stare into the fire, his back to me. The meeting I was coming from in Great Falls, it wasn't business as usual. It was a setup, deliberately arranged by someone in my organization to get me alone, vulnerable. Someone working with Kozlov. Your traitor. Yes, but here's what I didn't tell you. I knew it was a setup. I went anyway, because I needed to know who it was, needed them to reveal themselves. The bullet wound, being left in the storm, that was the price of confirmation. I stared at his back, trying to process this. You let yourself get shot? I had a backup plan. Men who were supposed to intercept before it got that far. But Kozlov had more people in place than we anticipated. My backup was delayed, and suddenly I was bleeding out in a snowstorm. He turned to face me. Then you came along and saved my life, completely derailing both Kozlov's plan and mine. So I was just a complication in your elaborate scheme. At first, maybe. But then. He moved back to the table, sat down, his eyes never leaving mine. Then I got to know you. Your strength, your compassion, your stubborn refusal to be intimidated. And I realized you weren't a complication. You were a variable I hadn't accounted for. One that changed everything. Dominic. Let me finish. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I've spent 10 years in this life, Sarah. 10 years building power, making deals, eliminating threats. I'm good at it. Too good. And somewhere along the way, I forgot there was anything else. Any other way to live. And now? Now I'm sitting across from a woman who risked her life to save a stranger. Who faced down Russian killers with nothing but courage and quick thinking. Who makes me want things I thought I'd given up on. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. Now I'm realizing that maybe power and control aren't the only things worth fighting for. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm giving you a choice. A real one. He squeezed my hand gently. Option 1. I disappear you. New life. New identity. You're safe and free and we never see each other again. Option 2. You stay. Help me finish this war with Kozlov. And when it's over, we see if this thing between us is real or just adrenaline and proximity. You're asking me to choose between safety and... I couldn't finish the sentence. And me. He said it simply, without embellishment. I know it's insane. I know you barely know me. That everything about this is wrong. But I can't let you go without giving you the choice. Without letting you know that you've become important to me. More important than you should be. I should have laughed. Should have chosen option 1 without hesitation. Safety, freedom. A normal life far from bullets and bodyguards and Russian assassins. It was the rational choice. The smart choice. But I'd been playing it safe since the divorce. Playing it safe, staying numb, living half a life in the Montana wilderness. And it had left me empty, going through motions without really feeling anything. Until Dominic Raven had crashed into my life and woken me up. What would option 2 actually look like? I asked, surprising myself. Practically speaking. Hope flared in his eyes, quickly controlled. You'd stay in your house for now, maintain your normal routine, but with full protection. My men would be with you every moment. When Kozlov makes his move, and he will, we'll be ready. We'll use his attack to draw him out. Finish this once and for all. Using me as bait. With your consent and full knowledge, yes. I won't lie to you about the risks, Sarah. It's dangerous. There's a real chance something could go wrong. that my protection might not be enough. If you choose this path, you need to know exactly what you're getting into. I pulled my hand back, stood up, needing space to think. I moved to the window, stared out at the dark forest surrounding the cabin. Out there, somewhere, Kozlov's people were hunting. In here, Dominic was offering me a future, dangerous and uncertain, but real. "Tell me about the endgame," I said finally. "Let's say we take down Kozlov. Let's say we survive. Then what? You go back to being a crime lord, and I what? Become a mob wife? Live in constant fear of the next war, the next rival, the next bullet?" He came to stand behind me, close enough that I could feel his warmth but not touching. I've been thinking about that a lot these past few days, about what kind of life I want, what kind of man I want to be. My father built this organization from nothing, and I expanded it, made it stronger. But at what cost? I have money, power, respect. I also have a bullet wound and a list of enemies longer than my arm. So maybe it's time for a change. I've been working on legitimizing the business for years, moving money into legal enterprises, phasing out the criminal operations. It's slow work, dangerous work, because every step toward legitimacy makes me look weak to rivals. But it's possible. In 5 years, maybe less, I could be nothing more than a wealthy businessman with a questionable past. I turned to face him. "You'd really do that? Give up the power, the control?" "For the right reason, yes." His hand came up, cupping my face gently. "For the right person." "We barely know each other," I protested weakly. "I know you're brave. I know you're compassionate. I know that when you make a commitment, you honor it, even when it costs you. I know that you see me, the real me, not just the reputation or the power." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. "And I know that when I'm with you, I feel more human than I have in 10 years. "Dominic." I should have pulled away. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that this was insane, that you don't fall for a criminal, that fairy tales like this don't happen in real life. But then he was kissing me, and rational thought fled. His lips were warm, demanding but gentle, and I found myself kissing him back with an intensity that surprised us both. His arms wrapped around me, careful of his healing wounds, pulling me close. I could feel his heart racing against mine, could taste the wine on his lips, could lose myself completely in this moment of stolen intimacy. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "So," he murmured, "option 1 or option 2? I should have chosen safety. Should have walked away from this impossible man and his impossible offer. Should have been smart, practical, rational. "Option 2, I heard myself say, but with conditions. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. "Name them." "First, complete honesty. No more secrets, no more schemes I'm not aware of. If I'm going to be bait in your trap, I deserve to know every detail." "Agreed." "Second, after Kozlov is dealt with, you start legitimizing immediately. No more delays, no more excuses. I won't be part of a criminal empire, Dominic. If we're going to try this, it has to be moving toward something better. I can do that." Third, I hesitated, then pushed forward. "Third, you have to understand that I'm not property. I'm not a possession to be protected and controlled. I'm a partner, or I'm nothing. My choices, my autonomy, those aren't negotiable." Something softened in his expression. "I know. Trust me, Sarah. The last few days have taught me that you can't be controlled or owned. It's one of the things I love most about you." Love. The word hung between us, too big and too soon, but somehow right. "Okay then," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's finish this, together." He kissed me again, sealing the agreement, and I let myself fall into it, into him, into this impossible choice that felt more right than any safe decision I'd ever made. Outside, the Montana winter night stretched on, cold and dark and full of danger. But inside this cabin, in Dominic's arms, I felt warmer and more alive than I had in years. Tomorrow we'd plan. Tomorrow we'd prepare for whatever Kozlov would throw at us. Tomorrow, I'd face the consequences of choosing danger over safety, passion over practicality. But tonight, we had this. Two people who shouldn't have found each other, planning a future that shouldn't be possible, believing against all odds that love could be stronger than the violence that surrounded us. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was probably the worst decision I'd ever made. And I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. The plan was simple in concept, treacherous in execution. We'd make it impossible for Kozlov to resist. We'd give him exactly what he wanted, proof that Dominic and I were connected, that I knew something worth killing for. And then, when he sent his people to eliminate us both, we'd be waiting. "You understand what we're asking you to do?" Bishop asked me 2 days later, his expression grave. We were back at the cabin, a dozen of Dominic's people surrounding us, going over the operation for the third time. "I'm going to make it obvious I'm hiding something," I recited. "Act nervous around town, make calls from public places where I can be overheard, behave like someone with a secret. Give Kozlov enough to convince him I'm worth grabbing." "And when they take you," Dominic added, his jaw tight with tension he couldn't quite hide, "you'll have this." He held up what looked like an ordinary medical alert bracelet. GPS tracker, panic button, and a listening device. "We'll know exactly where you are and what's happening every second." "Until they find it and remove it," I pointed out. "Which is why you'll also have this." He showed me a small capsule, no bigger than a pill. "Swallow it before they take you. It'll transmit your location for 72 hours. Completely undetectable." I took the capsule, turning it over in my fingers. My life had become something out of a spy thriller. 3 weeks ago, my biggest concern had been whether to get a cat for company. Now I was preparing to be kidnapped by Russian mobsters, wearing tracking devices, and planning an ambush that could end with multiple people dead. "What if something goes wrong?" I asked, voicing the fear we were all thinking. "What if they move me before you can get there? What if they don't take me where you expect?" "Then we adapt." Dominic's hand covered mine, warm and solid. "But Sarah, if at any point you want out, if this becomes too much, just say the word. We'll find another way." There is no other way. I'd spent the past 2 days thinking about little else. Kozlov won't stop until he's eliminated every possible witness to his attempt on your life. That means me. Running would just delay the inevitable. At least this way, we're choosing the battlefield. "She's right," Marco said from his position by the window. He'd barely spoken during the planning sessions, but when he did, everyone listened. "Kozlov's getting impatient. His people are making more obvious moves, taking bigger risks. He wants this finished." "Which means he's vulnerable," Bishop added. "Impatient men make mistakes. We just need to give him the right opening." The meeting broke up an hour later, everyone moving to their assigned positions. The trap was set. Now we just needed Kozlov to take the bait. Dominic pulled me aside as the others filed out. "Walk with me." We stepped out onto the cabin's porch, the cold air a shock after the warmth inside. Snow had started falling again, fat flakes drifting down in the afternoon light. It should have been peaceful, beautiful even. Instead, it felt like watching sand fall through an hourglass, counting down to something inevitable. "I need you to know something," Dominic said, staring out at the forest. "If this goes wrong, If I have to choose between catching Kozlov and keeping you safe, I'm choosing you. Every time. That's not the plan. I don't care. He turned to face me, his expression fierce. The plan is good. Solid, even. But plans go wrong, Sarah. Bullets fly in unexpected directions. Split-second decisions have to be made, and I need you to understand that my priority isn't revenge or finishing this war. It's you. Keeping you alive. Nothing else matters. His intensity should have scared me. Instead, it made me reach up and pull him down for a kiss, pouring everything I couldn't say into that connection. When we broke apart, his arms stayed around me, holding me close. We're going to survive this, I said against his chest. Both of us. And then, you're going to take me on a proper date. Somewhere normal, where no one's trying to kill us. A proper date, he repeated, something like amusement in his voice. I'm not sure I remember how those work. We'll figure it out together. I pulled back to look at him. That's what people do, right? When they're trying to build something real? So I've heard. His thumb traced my jawline. Though I have to admit, most relationships don't start with attempted murder and Russian mob wars. We're overachievers. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine, so different from the cold, controlled man he showed the world. This was the real Dominic, I realized. The one beneath the armor. The one who'd learned to hide his humanity to survive in a world that saw compassion as weakness. I love you, he said suddenly, the words unguarded and raw. I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel it. You walked into my life in a blizzard and somehow made me remember what it feels like to be human. Tears stung my eyes. I love you too, I whispered. God help me, I do. We stood there on that porch, holding each other as snow fell around us. Two people who shouldn't have found each other, loving each other against all reason and logic. And for just a moment, the danger and violence faded away, leaving only this: connection, hope, the fragile possibility of a future. Then Bishop opened the door. Boss, we've got movement. Kozlov's people are mobilizing. Reality crashed back. The moment of peace shattered. Dominic's expression shifted instantly, the armor sliding back into place. How many? He asked. At least a dozen, maybe more. They're staging at a location about 20 miles from Sarah's house. Looks like they're preparing for a major operation. Dominic looked at me. This is it. They're coming for you tonight. Last chance to back out. I thought of my quiet life before him. The numbness, the isolation, the feeling of watching my existence from the outside rather than living it. Then I thought of the past 3 weeks. The terror, yes, but also the intensity, the feeling of being fully present, fully alive, fully connected to another human being. Let them come, I said. I returned to my house that afternoon, following my normal routine. Stopped at the grocery store, chatted with the cashier about the weather, picked up a prescription at the pharmacy. Mundane, ordinary activities that felt surreal, given what I knew was coming. But I also made sure to be noticed. Made calls from my cell phone in public places, speaking in low, worried tones about needing to leave town soon. Asked my neighbor casually if she'd noticed anyone watching the neighborhood. Small things. Deliberate things. Designed to paint me as someone with secrets. Someone worth investigating. By the time I reached my house at dusk, I knew they'd taken the bait. I could feel eyes on me. Could sense the net tightening. Marco and Tony were positioned a quarter mile away, hidden but ready. Another team was staged 5 miles out. Bishop coordinated from a mobile command center. And Dominic. Dominic was somewhere close, refusing to be anywhere else despite the risk. I went through my evening routine, turning on lights, making dinner I couldn't eat, trying not to jump at every sound. The tracking capsule sat in my pocket, ready to swallow at the first sign of trouble. The bracelet was on my wrist, its panic button hidden beneath a decorative cover. At 8:47 p.m., my power went out. Not just my house, the whole road. Someone had cut the lines. My heart hammered as I pulled out my phone, the screen's glow the only light in sudden darkness. I pressed the panic button on the bracelet, then swallowed the capsule, washing it down with water I poured in the dark. Then I waited. The sound came from my back door, subtle but distinct. Someone picking the lock, moving with professional efficiency. I stayed where I was at the kitchen table, hands visible, making no sudden moves that might trigger a nervous finger on a trigger. The door opened. 3 figures entered, moving with tactical precision, weapons drawn and equipped with flashlights that cut through the darkness. The beams found me, pinned me in place. "Sarah Mitchell?" The voice was familiar, the pale-eyed Russian from before. "You're going to come with us. Make noise, resist, and we'll kill you right here. Cooperate and you might survive this." "Where are we going?" I asked, proud that my voice barely shook. "Somewhere private. Somewhere we can talk properly about your guest during the storm." He smiled, cold and predatory. "Yes, we know about Dominic Raven. We know you saved him. Now you're going to tell us everything he told you, where he is, what he's planning. And if you're very lucky, we'll make your death quick afterward." 2 of them grabbed my arms, zip-tying my wrists in front of me with practiced efficiency. A hood was pulled over my head, blocking out even the flashlight beams. I fought down panic, focused on breathing, on remembering that I wasn't alone, that Dominic's people were tracking me, that this was part of the plan. They dragged me outside, the cold air hitting me even through the hood. I heard a vehicle door open, felt myself being shoved inside. The door slammed. The engine started. We were moving. I tried to track the turns, the time, anything that might help. But after the first few minutes, I was lost. They'd driven for maybe 20 minutes when the vehicle finally stopped. I was pulled out, marched across what felt like gravel, then inside a building that echoed with our footsteps. The hood was yanked off. I blinked in the sudden light, trying to orient myself. We were in what looked like an old warehouse, mostly empty except for a few scattered crates and a single chair positioned in the middle of the space. Bright work lights had been set up, creating harsh shadows. And standing near the chair, watching me with cold calculation, was a man I instinctively knew was Viktor Kozlov. He was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'8", with iron gray hair and the kind of face that revealed nothing. But his eyes, pale gray and absolutely devoid of warmth, held a cruelty that made my blood run cold. "The nurse who saved Raven's life," he said, his accent thicker than his men's. "Interesting. Tell me, do you make a habit of rescuing criminals from snowstorms?" "I make a habit of trying to save lives," I replied, forcing strength into my voice. "That's what nurses do. Noble." He moved closer, circling me like a shark, but misplaced in this case. "Do you know how many people Dominic Raven has killed? How many lives he's destroyed?" "Do you know how many you've destroyed?" I countered. His hand moved faster than I could track, backhanding me across the face hard enough that I tasted blood. My ears rang from the impact, but I forced myself to stay upright, to meet his eyes without flinching. "You have spirit," he observed. "That's good. Makes it more interesting. Sit." His men forced me into the chair, securing my zip-tied wrists to the armrests with additional restraints. I was completely immobilized, completely at their mercy. Fear clawed at my throat, but I pushed it down, focused on staying calm. Kozlov pulled up a crate, sitting across from me like we were having a casual conversation. "Now, let's discuss what Raven told you, what information he shared, what plans he has." He didn't tell me anything, I said truthfully. I'm just a nurse. I patched him up and he left. That's all. Is that so? Kozlov pulled out a knife, the blade catching the harsh light. Then why were his men watching your house? Why did he call you every night? Why did you meet with him 2 days ago at his cabin? My stomach dropped. They'd been watching more carefully than we'd thought. They knew about the cabin, about the phone calls. How much else did they know? He was grateful, I said, improvising. I saved his life. He wanted to make sure I was safe, that his enemies wouldn't come after me. I laughed bitterly. Guess that didn't work out. Kozlov studied me for a long moment, then nodded to one of his men. Search her, thoroughly. Check for tracking devices, wires, anything electronic. They found the bracelet immediately, of course. That was expected. They smashed it, grinding the pieces under a boot heel. Then they patted me down, professional and impersonal, looking for anything else. They found nothing. The capsule was already well into my digestive system, undetectable without medical equipment they didn't have. Clean, one of them reported. Kozlov smiled. Good. That means whatever happens here, Raven won't know about it until it's too late. He leaned forward, the knife dancing between his fingers. Last chance for honesty, nurse. Where is Dominic Raven? What is he planning? I don't know. I met his eyes steadily. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. So you might as well get on with whatever you're planning to do, because I'm not talking. Something like respect flickered in his cold eyes. Brave or stupid. With women, it's sometimes hard to tell the difference. He stood, moving behind me. Very well. We'll do this the hard way. I felt the cold press of the blade against my shoulder, felt it cut through fabric and skin in one smooth motion. Pain bloomed, sharp and immediate. I bit down hard on my lip, refusing to scream, refusing to give him the satisfaction. That was just a warning, Kozlov said conversationally. To show you I'm serious. The next one will hurt much more. And if you continue to refuse to cooperate, well, he came around to face me, the bloody knife held casually. I have hours to work with. Days if necessary. Eventually everyone talks. It's just a question of how much pain you can endure first. I was about to respond when the warehouse's main door exploded inward. Everything happened at once. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Kozlov's men dove for cover, returning fire at dark figures pouring through the entrance. I threw myself sideways, chair and all, hitting the concrete hard, but getting out of the immediate line of fire. Through the chaos, I saw Dominic, moving with deadly precision despite his healing wounds, his team flanking him. They'd come, exactly as promised. The tracking capsule had worked. But Kozlov hadn't run. He'd grabbed a weapon and was fighting back, his men forming a defensive perimeter. This wasn't going to be a quick rescue. This was going to be a bloodbath. A bullet struck the concrete inches from my head, spraying fragments that stung my face. I needed to get free, needed to move. I worked frantically at the restraints, my wrists already bleeding from the zip ties, but they wouldn't budge. Then Marco was there, appearing from the smoke and confusion. He cut through my restraints with a knife, pulled me to my feet. Stay behind me. Move when I move. We made it 3 steps before Kozlov stepped into our path, his weapon aimed directly at my head. Stop, he ordered, and Marco froze. The gunfire had ceased, both sides at a momentary standoff. Dominic stood 15 feet away, his weapon trained on Kozlov, his face a mask of cold fury. Let her go, Victor, he said, his voice deadly calm. This is between you and me. Is it? Kozlov smiled, pressing the barrel of his gun against my temple. I think the nurse has made it very much about her. Tell your men to lower their weapons, or I'll paint the walls with her brain. Do it, And you won't leave this building alive, Dominic replied. I'm not leaving anyway. Kozlov's smile widened. But at least I'll take something precious from you first. At least I'll make sure you know what loss feels like. Time seemed to slow. I saw Dominic's finger on the trigger, saw the calculation in his eyes, saw him weighing the shot, the risk, the impossibility of making it before Kozlov could pull his own trigger. Saw him realize there was no clean solution, no way to save me without risking my death. I made the choice for him. I drove my elbow back into Kozlov's gut, twisting away from the gun's barrel as I moved. The weapon discharged, the bullet passing so close to my head I felt its heat. But it missed. And in that instant of distraction, Dominic fired. The bullet took Kozlov in the shoulder, spinning him away from me. Dominic's team surged forward, overwhelming the remaining Russians. It was over in seconds. The warehouse suddenly quiet except for the groans of the wounded and the ringing in my ears. Dominic reached me first, his hands on my face, my shoulders, checking for injuries with barely controlled panic. Are you hurt? Sarah, talk to me. I'm okay, I managed, though I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. I'm okay. He pulled me against him, holding me like he'd never let go. I could feel his heart hammering, could feel the tremors running through him that matched my own. We'd survived. Against all odds, we'd actually survived. Kozlov was on the ground, Bishop standing over him with a weapon trained on his head. The Russian was still conscious, blood spreading from his shoulder wound, his expression one of bitter rage. It's over, Victor, Dominic said, not releasing me. Your people are dead or captured. Your organization in Montana is finished. You're finished. You think killing me solves anything? Kozlov spat. I have people everywhere. They'll come for you. For her. For everyone you care about. No, Dominic said calmly. They won't. Because I'm giving them a choice. Work for me, or leave Montana entirely. Your empire here is mine now. And the first order I'm giving is that Sarah Mitchell is off limits. Anyone who touches her, anyone who even looks at her wrong, answers to me. That message will reach every criminal organization in the western states by morning. He looked down at me, something fierce and protective and possessive in his eyes. She's mine, he said simply. And I protect what's mine. Kozlov laughed, a bitter sound. You've gone soft, Raven. Love makes you weak. It'll be your downfall. Maybe, Dominic agreed. But I'd rather fall with her than stand alone without her. Bishop made a call, and within minutes, sounds of approaching sirens filled the air. FBI, he explained at my confused look. We called them before we came in. Anonymous tip about a kidnapping in progress. They'll find Kozlov and his men. Plenty of evidence of their crimes. Let the law handle him for once. And us? I asked. We were never here. He smiled slightly. Ghost in and ghost out. It's what we do. By the time the FBI arrived, we were long gone, disappearing into the Montana night. Marco drove while I sat in the back with Dominic, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder, both of us too exhausted for words. It was over. Really, truly over. Kozlov would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. His organization was scattered, leaderless. The threat had ended. And somehow, impossibly, I'd survived. Where are we going? I asked finally. Home, Dominic answered. Your place first, so you can pack. Then somewhere warm. Somewhere with beaches and sunshine and no Russian mobsters. That sounds perfect. We can stay as long as you want, he continued, his hand finding mine, our fingers intertwining. Week, month, year. Take time to figure out what comes next. I know what comes next, I said, surprising myself with my certainty. You start legitimizing your business, like you promised. I keep being a nurse because I'm good at it and I love it. And we build a life together. A real one. Outside of all this darkness. That simple? That complicated, I corrected. It won't be easy. You'll have enemies who won't forgive you for going legitimate. I'll have family and friends who won't understand why I'm with you. We'll have to work for this, fight for this. But yes, that's what comes next. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I don't deserve you, Sarah Mitchell. Probably not, I agreed, squeezing his hand. But you're stuck with me anyway. I saved your life, remember? That makes you my responsibility. His laugh was warm and genuine. Is that how it works? According to some ancient tradition I just made up, yes. We drove through the Montana night, leaving violence and danger behind, heading toward something new. Something uncertain, yes, but also full of possibility. 3 weeks ago, I'd saved a stranger's life in a blizzard. In doing so, I'd saved my own life in ways I was only beginning to understand. I'd found purpose, passion, and a love I'd never expected. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Dominic's past would cast long shadows. Building trust would take time. Creating a legitimate life from a criminal empire would take years. There would be setbacks, challenges, moments when we'd wonder if we'd made the right choice. But as I sat there in his arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine, I knew with absolute certainty that we'd face it all together. Because some loves are worth fighting for, worth risking everything for, worth believing in even when logic says it's impossible. And ours, born in blood and snow and desperation, was one of them. 6 months later, I stood on the beach at sunset, watching waves roll in from the Pacific, my toes digging into warm sand. The Montana winter felt like a lifetime ago, like something that had happened to someone else. Dominic emerged from our rented house, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He'd kept his promise, spending the past 6 months methodically legitimizing his business holdings, selling off criminal operations, reinvesting in legal enterprises. It was slow work, dangerous work, but he was doing it. For me. For us. For the future we were building. Penny for your thoughts, he said, handing me a glass. Just thinking about how strange life is, I answered, accepting the wine. How one choice, one moment, can change everything. Regrets? There was vulnerability in the question, a fear he rarely showed. Not even one. I turned to face him. This man who'd been a stranger, then a patient, then an impossible complication, and finally, the love I never saw coming. Though I am wondering, when you're going to make an honest woman of me. He laughed, reaching into his pocket. Funny you should mention that. The ring was simple, elegant, perfect. A diamond that caught the sunset light, surrounded by smaller stones that might have been sapphires. He dropped to one knee in the sand, looking up at me with eyes that held everything we'd survived, everything we'd built, everything we still hope to create. Sarah Mitchell, he said, you saved my life in more ways than one. You saw past the violence to the man beneath. You chose danger over safety, truth over comfort. You made me believe I could be more than my father's legacy, more than the sum of my crimes. Will you marry me? Will you keep saving me every day for the rest of our lives? Through tears, I nodded. Yes, on one condition. Name it. No more mob drama, no more Russian assassins. Just us, building something normal, something good. I can live with that. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then stood, pulling me into his arms. In fact, I can't wait to live with that. As we kissed, the sun sinking below the horizon behind us, I thought about the woman I'd been before that blizzard. Lonely, numb, playing it safe. And I thought about the woman I'd become. brave, alive, willing to risk everything for love. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst circumstances. Sometimes you find your future in the last place you'd think to look. Sometimes you have to walk through darkness to find the light. And sometimes you just have to be crazy enough to drag a wounded stranger out of a snowstorm and see where the choice takes you. For me, it had taken me here, to a beach at sunset, wearing an engagement ring, planning a future with an ex-mob boss who'd become the love of my life. Not the story I'd planned, but exactly the story I needed, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it.